should turn that on first. This is our special meeting agenda, Parks and Waterways, October 25th, 2022, and the time is 1:32 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Filios, and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Hearing none. Our first business meeting, or I should say action business item, is going to be Parks and Waterways. This is the advisory board follow-up. And then number one is a citation increase for parking violations. So, Nick, do you want to?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Hey, welcome back, Commissioner Filios. Good to see you back in Sal, sir.
Thank you.
Just a quick update on the Waterways Advisory Board meeting that occurred on October 13th. Doug Harris, the chairman, could not be here, so I'll just give the board just a quick heads up. I'm going to start with two items that we're not going to really talk about today, just because I know you haven't seen the meeting minutes yet. What was on the agenda on October 13th was also the removal of illegal buoys. Tom Torgerson added that to the agenda. He wasn't able to make the meeting, so we're going to carry that forward to the December meeting. And then the other item was excessive wake ordinance. There's a citizen that wants to talk about that. That person, as I understand, may come forward in December meeting. So we'll have some updates after the December meeting on those items. But, Mr. Chairman, back to what's before us today. And on that, at that meeting discussed was some additional proposed ordinances that I'd like to discuss with you today and get some direction on whether or not I can bring forward a draft resolution for your consideration. And item number one is the citation increase for parking violations. And this board actually tackled this just a year ago. You might recall that we had a lot of influx from out of state during COVID, and parking violations just blew up at our facilities. And so the good board agreed to double those citations from $25 to $50. And unfortunately, Commissioners, I know this sounds odd, but the price of fuel seems to be tied with what people are willing to pay, because the comments we're getting back from those who have been cited for $50 was, well, it cost me $100 to fill my tank, so if it cost me $50 to park here for the day, okay. So they're literally willing to violate our rules and park where they wish because they do not feel the citation amount is enough motivation. So one of the ways to deal with that is to increase that fine again and see if we can't get some compliance. That said, I really hate to leverage such a large amount on those who just don't know the rules. But I did want to share with the commissioners that if we have someone that calls, and we do this frequently, and explains, I really didn't know, we have the opportunity to avoid that citation, and we do that a lot. We want it to be an education, not punitive. But for those that are willing to just say, fine, cite me, then at least the $100 is some more motivation for them to reconsider. So that is something that with the board's support, I'd like to have Jamila draft a resolution to bring forward for your consideration. That's just one of the few here in front of you today.
So is this for boat launches and parks, or just one or the other? It's both.
Both, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Any questions?
Can we do more?
You could, Commissioner, and that was discussed. There was some discussion. Please don't hold me to the exact numbers, but I want to say it was $250. A few of the board members were talking about. My only concern with that, Commissioner, is that could $250 to you or to I may be palatable, but to that single mom that really didn't know and doesn't end up calling us, just pays it, it could mean the difference between them paying rent and not. So it is double. We still are doubling, and the commissioners we can keep doing this until something works. But
Until we get some.
Yes, Commissioner, but I do think it's reasonable. I think we need to be trying to find that sweet spot to where it's motivation, but it's also not so punitive that it becomes problematic for people to pay. And there's another component to that. If it's too much, some people just won't pay that either. And then we actually could lose revenue simply because they can't pay it. So I think that the $100 is a good place to start. That would be my recommendation.
I'm fine with 100.
Okay, I'm fine with 100. So,
Not enough.
okay. So we've got direction to have Jamila do the ordinance.
Very good.
Okay. And, all right, are we done with that one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then item 2, 15-minute loading and unloading at county docks. And I understand we're also having issues on this with boat parking long-term and long-term parking in our launches, so.
Indeed. Yes, Commissioners. With growth and the cost of moorage and the availability of moorage, what we're finding more and more, particularly the last 2 years at county boat launches, is folks leaving their boats tied up for days and days at a time, hoping that they can just come back and jump in it. Let's say they splash it on a Wednesday and they have a parking spot and a place to store their boat until the weekend because they either A, can't find moorage, can't afford moorage, et cetera. And we also have some additional issues with people who own property that are boat-in only that have decided to start leaving their vehicles and their boats at the county's facilities. And they're convinced that we need to provide them with parking because they didn't know that they couldn't park there when they bought the house. But some of those homes have been there, as the board's aware, many years. And that's a due diligence in purchasing, in our opinion. We can't accommodate all these people at our small launches. So it's my recommendation to the board for all these mixed reasons that we implement a 15-minute loading and unloading at county docks other than where there is moorage or otherwise posted, where we have moorage. Some examples would be Maury Park, Harrison, Carlin Bay. And so unless otherwise posted, it would be 15-minute loading and unloading. But I want to share with the board, there is language in our current Waterways ordinance that does allow for repair. I mean, people's boats break. That's what they do, right? Boats break. So it does allow, if I remember, 4 hours for repairs. And quite frankly, if someone's having their boat worked on, we're not going to give them too hard of a time as long as they're not blocking traffic. So this really is intended for those that are abusing the privilege of the boat launch in the docks.
And what's the penalty?
It would be the same, Commissioner. Parking, moorage, $100.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm fine with it, Nick. I'm okay with it.
I'm good as well.
Not enough.
Okay, so this is just about the signs, to go forward with posting of the signs. Separate than the violations, but, okay, so is that all for that one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then number 3, illegal dumping at county docks or marine facilities.
So another phenomenon that we've experienced the last few years is that the cost of disposal of docks and other debris from the water is very expensive, and people just don't know what to do with it or choose not to deal with it themselves. So what we're experiencing, our neighbors and people who live on the water dragging their docks and other debris to a county boat launch, knowing that if it lands between the docks and blocks the launch, we're going to have to deal with it and pay for it to be disposed of. Unfortunately, a lot of these docks are constructed using spikes. You know, they're spiked together with logs and timbers, so it makes it very difficult for us to cut those up. We actually have to skid them onto a large trailer, haul them to solid waste. It's labor intensive and very expensive. So I did make a recommendation to the Idaho Department of Lands a few years ago that they simply collect a deposit from those that are replacing their docks, $2,500, $3,000, whatever they think is necessary. And once the permittee properly disposes of their dock, then they receive the deposit back. Thus far, we haven't got any traction on that, unfortunately, but that would take state legislation. But I think it's a way to help address this. But for us, we need some teeth to this, Commissioners. It's extremely expensive. As you can imagine, someone tows a 60-foot, 40-foot dock in a launch and walks away for us to deal with it. So I would like the board to consider this as a misdemeanor or something that I could take to Jamila to draft that would have a little more teeth than our civil citation that comes from our staff. Just predicated on the cost and the intentional interruption to public access that it causes. You know, you can imagine someone drags it in on a Saturday morning. we might not be able to move it for days by the time we mobilize equipment and get to it. So it's a real problem, and we need some language to be able to deal with it.
Okay.
So when you talk about illegal dumping, you're referring about the dumping of the dock
And other debris, yes.
and other debris?
Yes.
Okay.
As an example, Commissioner, if you have large logs or other just general lake debris that washes up on your beach, similar to your neighbor's leaves blowing in your yard, they're yours now. They don't see it that way. They see it as a public agency issue. When they call us, we explain that just like a leaf, from your neighbor blowing in your yard, it's washed up, it's yours. They disagree, so they usually drag it to, not just a county boat launch, unfortunately, they drag it to the city or Idaho Fish and Game, but we're here today to talk about the
Okay.
problem.
So the direction you're looking for is to have Jamila draft something?
Yes, Commissioner. For your consideration at a meeting to come.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, Bill? A couple questions, Nick. It happens once a year, it happens every single dock? I mean, what's the frequency here?
Unfortunately, at Spirit Lake, it happened 3 times in 1 year, just this
Okay.
past year. And we've experienced, I'm sorry, I can't put an exact number to it, Commissioner, but 21 boat launches throughout the county. And my staff doesn't always tell me.
Sure.
Now they are. Now they're keeping track. But I would say, I can say very comfortably 5 to 6 times just this year, this past boating season, so.
Okay. And then, as far as the fee or the deposit with IDL, does community development have anything to do with docks?
They don't, ma'am. It's below the ordinary high water mark, thus it's IDL's
Yes,
jurisdiction.
ideal.
Okay. Because I'm wondering, because they do have some jurisdiction where like potentially where the dock meets the land.
Yeah, the
So I'm
pier
just
and-
wondering if that's something that we could potentially collect for. So,
I'm happy to speak with David and see get his thoughts on that.
yeah,
Okay.
so, I don't know, just another thought. So, yeah, I'm fine with going, and then we'll just see what you and Jamila come up with and look at it that way.
Very good.
So this would only count if it was at our dock. So if somebody dumps something at a city dock, our ordinance would not apply. Is that correct, or would it?
It's a great question for Jamila. One I was going to ask her. That's why I made the comment, because it does happen everywhere. So I don't know if a county ordinance is applicable to Bureau of Land Management Facility or Fish and Game or Idaho State Parks. It'd be neat if it would, because I'm sure they're experiencing similar issues. So
Right. I imagine it could be, because since the waterway is patrolled by KCSO, they
it
may
is
be able to
state
do
water, so
that. Yeah,
maybe. I'll certainly ask her.
okay.
Okay.
'Cause that would be a good thing too. Instead of pushing off our problem, it
yeah.
would, take care of the whole thing, so.
Very-
All right, anything else, Nick?
No, ma'am. December meeting will be on December 8th, and that is where agencies submitting Waterways Improvement Fund grants, we'll present them to the Waterways Advisory Board for signature. We will be putting in one grant for Spokane Point to replace our ice-damaged docks there at Spokane Point, rather than submitting it to I-Grant. We've band-aided them together, and we'll go after a grant and see if we can get them replaced.
Okay. All right, Bill, Chris, anything else? No? All right, I will open it up for public comment, and since we do have a meeting right after this, I would ask to limit it to 5 minutes each. So, public comment? Yep, you can, wherever you like, just push the button so it turns green. There you go.
I'm going to sit because I have to go close to the microphone.
No, that's
Sure.
fine.
By the way, this item was on the meeting of the committee, the Parks and Waterway last week, but Deputy Miller was out of town and he wasn't there. So I'm reading this for you because my wife composed it, and I left you a copy of it. But we continue to appreciate your commitment to safety and environment. Protection for all who want to enjoy the Spokane River, whether they're on the water or on the shore. The kind of responsible actions you take with respect to boats making excessive wakes are mirrored in the jurisdictions across the U.S. as we seek to protect boaters, fragile ecosystems, and the ability of recreations of all types to enjoy the waterway. And I will add in here that we have been on the phone with a group of people all the way across the U.S. that are faced with the same problems. So this was the first year of the season, first season that the Sheriff's Office enforced to strengthen the regulation and about boats making wakes. He wanted to give you a report. We want to give you a report based on observations. I will interject here that Deputy Miller calls Susan his geek, so because of all the data she has all the time. So we heard from KSO Marine Patrols that they were enforcing the laws, but we've not seen the report yet. Miller's been out of town, and so we look forward to that report. We did hear from Marine Patrols. We had a couple stop by that were experiencing significant harassment from the surfer boaters. We also got reports from several surf boaters touring their success, pushing back hard on the deputies, who had stopped them when they were clearly making enhanced wakes. We suspect that information was quickly shared across the community, boating community, and that's concerning in general. So did the enforcement of the county's regulators have an effect this season? The answer to that is somewhat. There were fewer boats surfing on the river as a percent of all boat traffic. There were some boats who surfed on the river nearly every day, and most of those boats went back and forth, which is, with the boating industry, it's all issued a worry about that. They discourage them. Several boats routinely operate close to docks and shorelines, which is to be expected, I think. Boats towing inflatables and moving across the river, believe it or not, cause a lot of wake and a lot of turbulence in the river this season. We observed more boats plowing on the river. We think that reflects the increased traffic and more boats in general, as well as people who just don't know how to run their boats. We did hear from several surf boaters who told us they moved to Idaho so they could do what they wanted on our waterways, which was interesting. So thank you again for your work. To everyone, I thought there would be more people who wanted to encourage people to vote in the election next week. And this on behalf of Susan and Bob Steiger and Jim, who's here, all part of the River French 2019. Thank you.
Okay.
You come. I want to give you the thoughts.
I guess I shouldn't miss the opportunity, I guess. I think what Bob and Susan summarized is pretty much the case. The Sheriff's Department did write some tickets. We were told that by July we'd have a report. We didn't have one. We said at the next Waterways Committee they were going to have a report. We haven't had one. There is still a lot of, as I mentioned to Bill earlier, I had to call the Sheriff's Department one evening. I had 3 at the same time in front of my house. They said the sheriff would call me. I never got a call. So I think it's a very inconsistent enforcement, basically, is the issue. Is that we've had reports again of the sheriff's boats going by people that are wake surfing. And we've had reports of people, the surfers, being very discourteous to the deputies. And in fact, at the last Waterways Committee, one of the board members was bragging about how he was discourteous to the deputies because he doesn't believe in it. So I find that, really inappropriate. So anyway, we'll just keep, doing the battle, but unless the sheriff changes his position, okay, which he hasn't, will remain, I think, at status quo because there's nothing we can do to make him do his job. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Anybody online? Jonathan?
No comments.
Okay, great. Well, it is 1:51 and this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.